1. Factor it. Mike, get your note packet out, please. We just did. Factor it, and then we're gonna, before we draw anything, we're gonna go through our 5 main features. Well, 4/5. So vertical asymptotes, where? X equals 0. Good. Horizontal asymptote, big over small means does not exist. And so here we are. If we don't have a horizontal, then there's a follow-up step that we need to do, and that's find the slant asymptote, which comes from the long division. So if I do x squared minus 1 and divide by x, I should throw a plus 0x in there, just so it lines up. Exclusive of the remainder, whatever I get is going to be the equation for my slant asymptote. So x goes into x squared x times. X times 0 gives me 0x minus 0, and then that's my remainder, so -1 over x. So really, this portion, that's my slant asymptote, which is just the equation y equals x plus 0. Y equals x. I'm just putting the 0 there, so it's got the mx plus b format. Your x-intercepts come from the numerator. What are they? -1 and 1, good. And my y-intercept comes from plugging in 0, which is what? Does not exist. And of course it doesn't exist because there's an asymptote at x equals 0. The y-axis is an asymptote, so you're not going to have a point on it. So your asymptote is the y-axis, and you have an asymptote on the equation of the line y equals x. You still get your 4 sections here, right? It's just they're kind of slanted shape. So there's a section, there's a corner, here's another little corner, and there's a corner. And we just have to figure out how everything fits in here. So your x-intercepts are at -1 and 1, which pretty much tells me everything I need to know. Because since this point is in this upper left-hand corner, my graph is going to be cornered there. So this goes towards positive infinity, and that slants towards the asymptote. And since this point over here is in this corner, that's going to go towards negative infinity, and that's going to go towards the asymptote in that direction. Any questions? They definitely look weirder because you don't have upright quadrants, 90-degree quadrants anymore. You have these little weird shapes. But that's it on your calculator. And if I graphed that asymptote that I came up with via long division, it would slip right through that gap. Any questions? And we really didn't have a lot of features there because we were lacking a y-intercept. So even with that, we were able to do it. All right, try number 2 on your own, and I want to see what trouble you run into so I know what to explain and elaborate on. string doesn't make anything cancel, so you have no holes here. We're x minus 3, x plus 2 over x plus 3. And then I'm just going to start going through my features. So my vertical asymptote is where? X equals negative 3. If you guys need a shortcut reminder, that comes from the denominator. My horizontal asymptote comes from my rules. And this is what category? Right, big over small, so there is nothing horizontal, which means I definitely have a slant. And in order to come up with that, I have to do this long division out. So x squared minus x minus 6 over x plus 3. X times x will give me x squared. Line it up. Do subtraction. Be careful here because it's negative 1 minus 3, which is negative 4x. And then start over. X times negative 4. And then do your multiplication, negative 4x minus 12. Do your subtraction, negative 6 plus 12 is 6. That's just my remainder though, so I don't really care about it. That's my slant asymptote. Y equals that right there. What'd you get, Faith? X plus 2. Because you didn't do you did negative x and you added 3. It's negative. Remember, you have to insert your little negative signs, so you missed that sign. Mike? Raise your hand if you got x plus 2. That's because of your long division, and you forget your... You're thinking of substitution and elimination type stuff. Like when you're doing elimination and you're deciding whether or not to add or subtract the equations, you base it off of this. In long division, whatever lines up underneath, you always subtract. So negative 1 minus 3 would be negative 4, and that's going to change that to a negative 4, not a positive 2. Okay, once you're done with those asymptotes, your x-intercepts come from the numerator, which are what? Negative 2 and 3. And your y-intercept comes from plugging in 0. If you plug in 0 to the top, you'll get negative 6. Plug in 0 to the bottom, you get 3. So your y-intercept is negative 2. So hopefully this all comes together. If it doesn't, and it doesn't seem obvious what to do, you can always plug in more random points in whatever areas are of interest. So your vertical asymptote at negative 3. And your slant asymptote are the first two things to get on your paper. So a y-intercept of negative 4 and a slope of 1, up 1 over 1. So that creates 4 sections, although this one's very limited because I ran out of paper. But here's the bottom left corner, top left corner, top right corner, and bottom right corner. You see those 4 sections? Our graph is going to be cornered into 2 of those somehow. And then you'll probably make that decision based on where the points fall. So if you have an x-intercept at negative 2 and at positive 3, that pretty much tells you that you're going to occupy this upper right corner somehow. If you throw your y-intercept into the mix, that just gives you a little bit more accuracy, but definitely this is cornered here. Always when you go towards a vertical asymptote, you're either shooting up or shooting down. And then towards infinity, you approach your horizontal or your slant asymptote. Connor, question?
I'm just wondering why negative 4%.
That's the equation of the line.
Oh,
so it's mx plus b. And then really, if we're basing this off of our vertical asymptote, if on one side it goes towards positive infinity, then on the other side it has to go towards negative infinity. And like I said, I don't have much space, but that's going to be cornered down there. Any questions? I could throw a hole into the mix here. So let's pretend the original had like an x plus 5 and the denominator had a factor of x plus 5. where would my hole be? -5, comma, and then you would just plug into here to see the y coordinate. And so it would be somewhere down here on this bottom piece. And you would just put a very obvious open hole there and label the point. You can't. Oh, you cancel two of the factors? Oh, because one's x plus and one's x minus. Yeah, you can. Okay. Here's your homework.